Hey guys, Michael Kummer here, and in today's video I want to tell you the main differences between the AI-powered exercise bike named Carol that I've been using since the beginning of 2019 and other types of stationary exercise bikes, including traditional spinning bikes like the Peloton, or even air or fan bikes like an assault bike or the Rogue Echo bike. The good news is that you can get a great workout out of any of these bikes, but there are significant differences that you should know about before making a purchasing decision. So before we get started, make sure you subscribe to my channel and you click on the little alert button so you get notified when I publish more fitness videos like this. Before we talk about the differences between these types of bikes, let's talk about some of the things they all have in common and some of the benefits you can get out of any exercise bike. And one of the most obvious ones is that such exercise bikes are stationary, meaning that you can place them anywhere in your home and you can ride them pretty much anytime you want to. So these are some of the things those bikes have in common. But now let's talk about some of the differences. There are 4 core differences that I could identify between these bike categories that you should take into account before making a purchasing decision. Number 1 is the efficiency of a bike. So in other words, how efficiently can you reach your goals that you might have? And obviously your goals might be different. It's important that whatever bike you choose, it efficiently helps you reach the goals that you have. The second one, and that's closely related to the efficiency, is the time investment. How much time do you need to spend on a given bike to reach your goal? How often do you have to work out, and how long is every workout session to get to where you want to? That's number 2. And the first 2 really then lead right into the third difference, and that is the motivational factor. So how likely are you to continue ride that bike? Because as with many things fitness and health related, it has to be or become ingrained in your lifestyle. Just working out on a bike for 3 weeks and then calling it quits is not going to lead to permanent change or to a permanent weight loss or to an improved fitness or whatever the case might be. You need to keep doing it. And so it's incredibly important for whatever type of activity or type of bike you choose that you remain motivated to continue using it. Otherwise, it's gonna be a waste of money and you're gonna be back at square one sooner than later. And the fourth argument, or the fourth difference and factor, is price, obviously, because exercise bikes are typically not cheap. They cost a good amount of money, and so you want to make sure you pick the right one that fits your goals and your requirements. Before we dive into those 4 differentiating factors, I want to give you a brief overview and some of the pros and cons of those 3 bike categories that I'm comparing in this review. And number 1 is the spinning bike, like a Peloton for example. Number 2 is an air or a fan bike, like an assault bike or Rogue Echo bike. And the third one then obviously is Carol, the Carol AI bike that I've been using for over a year now. And let's start with the spinning bike, because that's a very popular type of bike. So with spinning bikes, the way it typically works is you can manually adjust the resistance to simulate if you're biking on a flat street, so to say, if you're going uphill or if you're going downhill, and that determines, and typically the coach tells you, okay, raise your resistance to a certain level. The core principle here really is that you or a program adjusts the intensity, and you need to ride on that bike for a certain amount of time to get something out of it, to burn enough calories, to keep your heart rate up long enough, etc., to be effective at the end of the day, to reach your goals. And it's not enough to do it once a week. You need to do that a couple of times a week. Manufacturers have realized that if you were to do spinning all by yourself, at home on your bike, you wouldn't be doing that for very long, because that's the reason why spinning classes are so popular. There is a coach yelling at you, there is you're in a group, there are other people sweating, and that community really is what keeps you motivated to a degree. If you have a spinning bike at home and you're all by yourself, trust me, you're not gonna be doing it for very long. I wouldn't be doing it for very long. But so companies like Peloton have realized that, and they came up with, like a virtual type of spinning class where you have a monitor in front of you and you might be live streaming, a class led by a coach. So you see the coach, you see like a ranking where you are compared to all the other people that participated in a particular class. And that's really one important factor to keep you motivated. But the bottom line with spinning still is you have to do it for an extended period of time, and you have to do it often enough for it to be effective. And the resistance control is basically up to you. You can change your resistance, or the program does it for you, but it's in a way that kind of mimics, climbing a hill, going down, riding on a flat surface. There is nothing particularly technologically advanced about that. It's just, increasing the resistance or decreasing it. That's pretty much it. But the good thing really is about spinning, it can be very effective. It's just time consuming. You're gonna be soaked in sweat, obviously, and you need to be motivated to really feel the burn for an hour. That's in a nutshell how spinning works. The second one that I wanna talk about is the classic air bike or fan bike, which from a technological perspective works quite different. Now with the spinning, you have a flywheel and the resistance is controlled using magnetism or friction, basically. You can control it, or the program controls it, and that controls how hard it is to pedal at the end of the day. With air bikes, as the name implies, it's the air resistance. So there's a fan basically built in, and as you pedal and that fan turns, it provides resistance via the resistance of the air, basically, that fan tries to move, right, when it spins. And you would typically find air bikes in CrossFit gyms, or if you're doing functional fitness, you might have experience with it. I do CrossFit and I'm riding air bikes multiple times a week. And air bikes can be incredibly exhausting because the more or the faster you pedal, the more power you put in, the faster the fan spins and the more air resistance you get. So you cannot possibly outride or out-pedal an air bike. The more you put in, it can always keep up with you and provide with enough resistance to really suck. There is no manual resistance setting or whatever that you can modify. It's really just based on how much you put in. And I would argue that if you are someone who wants to work out at home, with the goal of losing weight, or if you're not a CrossFit athlete preparing for competition, you probably don't want to go with an air bike, with one of those assault bikes. The Schwinn has one, then there is the classic assault bike, and there is the Rogue Echo bike, and many others that are air or fan based, and they can be very difficult. They can be very exhausting to ride on, and I think the motivational factor of those bikes is relatively low. The third type of bike, the one that I've been using, is the Carol AI bike. And while there are certain similarities between both the traditional spinning bike as well as the assault bike, it works completely differently. And we're gonna go into some of those details here before we talk about all of those differences, the 4 differences that I've mentioned before. But basically with Carol, the main purpose of Carol is to empty the glycogen stores. Glycogen is a storage mechanism to store sugar in either your liver or your muscle tissue. And when you work out, especially when you do aerobic exercises, like when you bike, etc., then your body uses or can use glycogen or glucose for fuel. And so at some point, if you exercise long enough, and that typically means for at least an hour, maybe longer, then all the glucose that's in your bloodstream, the blood sugar basically, gets used up, and your body starts releasing glycogen, or releases the glucose stored in glycogen. So it releases that from your muscle tissue, and that has certain health benefits. By doing that, you trigger certain ancient survival mechanisms. And so the goal of Carol is to trigger a release or an emptying of those glycogen stores as quickly as possible, so you don't have to spend an hour or so on the bike. And Carol indeed can trigger a release of glycogen stores in about 10 seconds. And so the traditional Carol workout regimen consists of 2 20-second sprints. There is some warm-up, there is some recovery in between, and there is some cool down. So all in all, you spend about 8 minutes on the bike. But during those 8 minutes, it's only really 40 seconds of intense exercise. And during those 40 seconds, Carol can do the same thing that other bikes can do in much, much longer workouts, okay? And that's really one of the core benefits of Carol. And the way it does it is, when you start your sprint, you feel next to no resistance at all. So it's really high frequency, and Carol calls it supra intensity. So I guess that's the next level up from high intensity or HIIT workouts. There is supra intensity. So one notch up. I'm gonna tell my editor to show some of those videos that where I'm on the bike exercising. And when I first saw those videos, I thought that my editor sped them up on purpose, so it looks faster than what it really is. But no, this is real time. This has not been sped up. This is how fast I went on Carol, and that with very little intensity. But the cool thing is about Carol, within about 10 seconds into the sprint or so, it starts increasing the intensity. So once you have reached that, once you have shocked your body into something is happening here that's not something I'm used to, then it starts increasing the intensity and it starts getting really, really tough. And that's only the first sprint. And then during the second sprint, it does the same thing again. You start very, very fast, and then it increases the intensity so much that in the last, especially the last 5 seconds of the second sprint, you feel like you're wading or you're paddling in mud. It's so hard, and it literally sucks the life out of you. So it's not fun to ride on Carol. It's intense, it's super intense. But by doing so, it can achieve the same results as other bike workouts, or even jogging or any types of other exercises that would take significantly longer than those 2 times 20-second sprints. And that's really the thing about Carol. I encourage you to look at my Carol video review or my blog article. That I'm gonna link both of them in the description below if you wanna find out more about how Carol works and what the validation studies have shown and what the scientific evidence behind that protocol is. Because there is plenty of scientific evidence that prove that what Carol is doing is indeed effective. So we're not going to go into those details now, but I just wanted to give you a brief overview of how Carol worked and what it does. So the main point here really is, and that leads us directly into the 4 differentiating factors, is that Carol can be super effective in a very short amount of time. And let's talk about those in more detail. So number 1, we discussed efficiency. So Carol is incredibly efficient in emptying your glycogen stores and in triggering an ancient survival mechanism. So if you think about it, and that's actually one of the themes in Carol, imagine you're an early human out on a hunt, and suddenly a saber-toothed tiger is attacking you, and you have to run away. You have to run away as fast as you possibly can. And being in that situation triggers a survival mode. There is like the body alarm reaction and everything that's chemically happening in your body at that time that enables you to run as fast as you can so you don't get killed. And as you keep running, there is obviously only so much time that you can run at a certain speed. I used to be a professional 100-meter sprinter, and I can tell you that after about 10 seconds or so, you're slowing down. You cannot sustain that pace forever, unless you're Usain Bolt. Maybe you can sustain it for 200 meters. But still, there is a limit to how long you can run super fast. And so with Carol, you get that initial sprint, that initial shocking the body into the survival mode of, I need to get out of this, and so you pedal as fast as you can, and then the intensity increases and you start getting more tired, and that whole process releases certain chemical reactions in your body on a cellular level. Your ATP gets depleted, your glycogen gets depleted, etc. All of those things that Carol can trigger by constantly adapting the resistance based on a protocol on the one hand, but also based on your biometrics, based on how much energy you put in, how much you slow down, and how you adapt and improve between different rides. So the first ride on Carol might have a different intensity than the second ride, because Carol learns from your rides and your heart rate, your intensity and everything, and constantly adapts to make it as hard as possible and to be as efficient as possible. And so efficiency is where Carol clearly wins. You cannot get the same efficiency out of a spinning bike or out of an assault bike or an air bike. It's simply not possible. So the efficiency is where Carol, in my opinion, clearly wins. And that leads directly into the second argument, and that is the amount of time you need to spend on a given bike. So with Carol, as I've mentioned, it's a time investment of 8 minutes. But the investment of the time you need to really push it is only 40 seconds. But let's say, 8 minutes it takes to ride on Carol. If you go to a spinning class, or if you use a spinning bike at home, then it's at least 45 minutes that you have to spend on a bike to start emptying glycogen stores, to sweat, etc., etc. But you will likely never trigger those survival circuits and those chemical reactions in your body as you do with Carol. So your afterburn is likely lower as well. That's the amount of calories that you burn after your workout has already ended. And based on the energy the body needs to kind of recover and repair. And the same is true with an assault bike. You cannot replicate those protocols. Even if you go 20 seconds hard, 2 minutes slow, 20 seconds hard on an assault bike, it is not the same intensity because you cannot replicate the initial speed followed by a consistent increase in resistance. You cannot do this on a regular bike, be it spinning or be it an assault bike. If you then, obviously if you ride those other bikes hard, you're sweating like a pig likely, so you have to take a shower. So you cannot easily do it, on your lunch break, especially not if you have, wear a suit or something. So the total time investment really goes beyond just a workout. It's, the shower after, etc., etc. So you take significantly more time on a non-Carol bike than you do on Carol. With Carol, I don't even sweat. And the reason why I don't sweat during doing those sprints is because during those 2 times 20 seconds, my heart rate spikes only for a brief moment before it recovers quickly again during the recovery, those 2 minutes recovery between sprints. So my heart rate never goes up long enough for my body to start overheating and to start sweating. And so I could do a ride on Carol in a suit. If if I work in an office and I just want to hop on Carol in my lunch break, I could do that in only 8 minutes and don't have to take a shower. So clear time advantage that goes to Carol. Third factor is the motivational factor. Now, if you're a triathlete and you have a spinning bike at home because you need to practice for competition, etc., then you don't need to be motivated to do your workout likely, because otherwise you wouldn't be a pro athlete. You're self-motivated to just do what needs to get done in order to improve your performance and compete well. But for anyone else who is not as driven as professional athletes are, it takes some self-motivation to go and work out, and especially if you do it at home. During the Corona pandemic, our gym was closed, our CrossFit box was closed for a couple of weeks, and we had to work out at home. And I can tell you, I'm fitness and healthy eating and all of that are core pillars of my life. So I don't need to be motivated to move and to improve my fitness, but I can tell you that the motivation to go to the basement and work out, even if it was together with my wife, was significantly lower than going to the box and working out with everyone and competing in a group setting, etc. There was a huge difference. And so if you're biking at home, then it's important that there are factors that can help you stay motivated. And so with a spinning bike like a Peloton, for example, you get some of that because there is the community aspect of that. You have your big screen and you have your coach video streaming, and you can see how you're doing in the middle of the race, etc., of the middle of the workout, how many calories you put in versus someone else, etc. So there is that motivational factor that I think is incredibly important. But still, taking the time factor into account as well, knowing that you have to now feel pain for at least 45 minutes or for an hour, or however long the workout might take, it's a higher hurdle than if you know that you only have to bike for 8 minutes, and out of those 8 minutes, it's really only tough for 40 seconds. So I think from a motivational perspective, Carol is more sustainable. You're more likely to keep working out on Carol because you only need to do it 3 times a week. So science or scientific studies have shown that there is no additional benefit to do it more often. I mean, you certainly can, it doesn't hurt, but to reach your goals, be it weight loss, be it improving health markers, etc., you only need to do it 3 times a week, and at 3 times 8 minutes, that's 24 minutes of time investment per week, in comparison to maybe, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times an hour, plus the shower, plus, knowing that you're gonna be enduring pain for much longer. And that leads us to, I think, the least likely option that will keep you motivated, and that's the air bike. I think if I had an air bike at home, I would probably ride it occasionally, but it's a pain. There is no community aspect, there is no monitor with live streaming or a coach, and it just sucks to ride the air bike. That's why many CrossFitters don't particularly like it. And I'm not a huge fan either. I like the challenge, but I know that it's working out on an air bike sucks a little bit. And so from a motivation perspective, I think Carol still wins here. Number 2 is spinning bikes, especially if something like Peloton, where you have the community aspect. And then number 3 is the assault bike, or a classic air or fan bike. Factor number 4 is price. Obviously, price is important because neither of those bikes are particularly cheap. It's an investment, and you want to make those investments carefully. And so an air bike, like maybe the Rogue Echo bike, you can get that for less than $1,000. So it's relatively inexpensive in comparison to some of the other options. But again, if you don't use it consistently and continuously, it's just, a $1,000 paperweight at the end of the day. So you really got to think carefully what type of athlete you are and how likely it is that you will stay motivated riding that bike. And unless you're a CrossFitter or someone with a clear goal, in the area of functional fitness maybe, or something else, I would not opt for an air bike as my first choice. Number 2, something like a Peloton you can get for around $2,000. I think the Peloton is $2,200 and something, plus a monthly subscription. I don't know how much it is, maybe $30 or so. And with that, you get obviously the hardware, which I think in terms of Peloton is a great piece of equipment. And you get that community aspect with all the classes, etc. I have some friends who ride Pelotons, and they really like it. But they're more like endurance athletes, and they really enjoy spending significant amount of time on those bikes. And if that's you, that's great. Carol is the most expensive one of the bunch. It costs, I think it retails for about $3,000 or just shy of $3,000, $2,900 something. And there is a 12-month monthly membership fee that is waived in the first year, however, so you pay it starting year 2. So it's the most expensive one of all 3 types. It's 3 times as expensive as an air bike and $800 or so more expensive than a Peloton. However, I think if you take the motivational factor, the time factor, and the effectiveness into account, then for the more money you pay, you basically pay for those things. And you pay in particular for not spending or not having to spend a lot of time on the bike. And I think that makes it still a great investment, because what good is a bike that's $1,000 or maybe $2,000, and then half a year in, if you last that long, you stop using it and it starts collecting dust in the corner. If that happens, then no amount of money was worth the bike, right? And so I think with Carol, yes, the initial investment is a little bit higher, but what you get is the highest chances of success by having to spend only a few minutes on that bike, only having to do it 3 times a week, and still having some of that community aspect. Not to the extent as a Peloton, but you still get your app and your web dashboard where you can see how you fare against either people in your own gym, if you have like a community, or other people globally that also use Carol. So I do that from time to time. I check what my rankings are, what my power output is, etc., how much I have improved in comparison to others. So there is that community aspect as well, but it's really knowing that I only have to suffer for 40 seconds per workout that makes me so motivated to go and use the bike again, knowing that all my health markers, everything, all the goals that I have, I get closer to, and I don't have to put in a lot of time. And that's really it. Those are the major differences between those 3 bike categories. Again, I've gotten a lot of questions from people who have either seen my Carol review on YouTube or who read my article, and they're wondering, well, you know, that sounds like more like a Tabata kind of workout, and why can't I not easily replicate it on my spinning bike or on my assault bike? Again, you can get to the same benefits, but with significantly higher time investment, and you cannot replicate the protocol of Carol on any other bike simply because you cannot dynamically or have the bike dynamically adjust the resistance exactly so that you burn through your glycogen stores as quickly as possible and trigger all of those molecular reactions that follow that. You know, all the enzymes and chemical reactions that happen on a cellular level when you trigger or when you activate certain triggers, including that survival mechanism. And that's pretty much it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, this button seems to be working as well. Either way, leave me a comment. If you have any questions about Carol, about any of the other bikes, drop me a comment below. I typically reply to all comments, and I'll see you next time.